Hey, hopefully you can see this. Okay, I have no other way of doing this. Um, yeah, I figured you'd want some audio instead of just a plain presentation, so I made you one. I can send you the presentation too as well. Um, so the Dawes Act, or the General Allotment Act, was used to reduce reservation lands by allotting parcels to individual heads of households and opening them up, the remainder to white settlers for purchase. So the new policy focused specifically on breaking up reservations by granting land allotments to individual Native Americans. So the reason, so basically what they were doing was they were like, okay, how can we assimilate the Indians back into society, or into our society, not back into it? And the reason that if the Indians adopted white clothing ways and maybe owned a farm or basically did what the white man did, they could gradually assimilate into the American population. So basically how that was broken up was like to each head of a family, 1/4 of a section, to each single person over 18 years of age, 1/8 of a section, like to each orphan child under 18 years of age, 1/8 of a section, and to each other single person under 18 years now living or who may be born prior to the date of the order of the president directing an allotment of the lands embraced in any reservation, 1/16 of a section. The worst part was it seemed like, oh, they were being, semi okay and giving them land, but really it wasn't. This land was garbage. It was poor. They couldn't farm. Heck, a lot of the Indians didn't even want to farm. It was a messed up thing. It's just another example of our government taking advantage of the Native Americans, and it's super weird that we never learned about this. So the Major Crimes Act. The Major Crimes Act was the law places certain crimes under federal jurisdiction if they are committed by Native Americans in Native territory. Since they were considered sovereign nations, they handled most things, but the U.S. government decided that the Native communities were not competent enough to deal with serious crimes and punishment. So there was 15 major crimes that the U.S. said that they weren't competent enough to deal with. A couple were like manslaughter, incest, robbery, and felonies. Although it can make sense, I think this was another just power grab by the U.S., especially when they said in their own words, not competent enough. That really bugged me. This was just, I felt like, another thing that the U.S. was doing to control Native populations. I think they could have done it many different ways with that. So the Indian Reorganization Act. So part of the Indian New Deal aimed at decreasing federal control of American Indian affairs and increasing Indian self-government and responsibility. So this was like one of the bigger first steps to treating the Indians well. So this was like gratitude for the Indian service to the country after World War I. So this act curbed future allotment of tribal communal lands to individuals and provided for the return of surplus lands to tribes rather than homesteaders. Awesome, this was huge. So it encouraged Indian nations to create constitutions, and also through a revolving credit fund, many Native Americans improved their economic status. So health and education also got much better. Nearly half of all Indians were at school at the time. And the Reorganization Act remains the basis of federal legislation concerning Indian affairs. It's been changed many times. That's a different loophole that I went down, but there was a lot of information. So then the Indian Self-Determination and Educational Assistance Act of 1975. So this gave tribes, instead of the government, the right to administer federal assistance programs as they saw fit without government interference. So the act rejuvenated tribal governments by admitting, rejecting, and countering previous paternalistic policies. So basically, things were getting better. They were overturning racist acts or things they had on the Indians. Nixon told Congress that the federal government should begin to recognize and build upon the capacities and insights of the Indian people. So people were starting to realize like what they've done and how wrong it was, and starting to change it for the good. So now Native American people were now able to operate their own schools. Native Americans now have the chance to take control of their own education, bringing their own language, beliefs, and philosophies to their schools. This also passed with a Religious Freedom Act they were given. They were starting to be able to practice their faith and their religions and their ways of life without being prosecuted. And this was so big for these people. And especially now that they could operate their own schools, they could teach their own languages and beliefs and philosophies in their own schools, which was huge because before they would be punished for that. So I have a closing statement. So America is moving in the right direction, but are we where we should be with this? I'd really like to hear your thoughts at the end of the year with our class, because I feel like we've talked about a lot of past things and we were not. And as this class is ending, it seems like we're in the right direction, but have we met that end goal of them being equal? I feel like through school, this is just something we've never talked about. This is the first time, and I'm a sophomore in college. That's insane to me to think about. But yeah, here's my citations.